Victor Hugo once said, "When fate hands us a sour lemon, it is so that we may try to turn it into a sweet lemonade." The Hunchback of Notre Dame is precisely that lemon, which Victor used to brew for us a cup of destiny, yet its taste is far from sweet. In fact, it is filled with bitterness. Derived from a Greek word, destiny, he penned this masterpiece as a tragedy. The Hunchback of Notre Dame shatters the dream of the most dazzling love, making one realize there are 3 truths about love we should know as early as possible. More than 100 years have passed in the literary world, which has never lacked the birth of masterpieces and masters. But there is one book that remains steadfastly in the top 10 world masterpieces: the classic romantic novel, The Hunchback of Notre Dame *, also known as Notre Dame de Paris *. Its author is the greatest French literary giant of the 19th century, Victor Hugo. The Hunchback of Notre Dame is a widely circulated tale of Beauty and the Beast. Over the past century, countless stories of Beauty and the Beast have emerged. I don't know if this particular story will make anyone feel bored, but please, for a moment, forget the romantic love plot between the beauty and the ugly. Because The Hunchback of Notre Dame * is not merely a pure love story. It is more like a painting that depicts the real world, portraying the strange inner thoughts of humanity. In The Hunchback of Notre Dame *, we will see contrasting aspects of life: morality and ugly desires, lofty aspirations, struggle, and helplessness. Through the 3 romantic relationships of the girl Esmeralda, the author crafts a vast mirror reflecting the servility, selfishness, and greed inherent in human nature. People always say that love is simple, but the human heart is too complicated. How can we gain a more complete worldview of life, love, or relationships? Why not read and experience the story from these classic works that describe human reality to shed more light on ourselves? As psychologist S.L. once said, maturity is not about understanding everything, but about seeing through the essence of human nature. And we need to know that behind love always lies our true nature. By reading this book, you can clearly see the naked truth of life, understand the truths in emotional relationships from different perspectives, and comprehend how to love and how to live in this world. Beneath that skin, there could be 1,000 masks. In Notre Dame Square, amidst fervent cheers and flickering firelight, a beautiful young girl dances gracefully to the rhythm of the drums. Her name is Esmeralda. She earns a living by street performing. Esmeralda radiates a fiery passion for life, making it hard to believe she has such a tragic and difficult fate. When she was very young, Esmeralda was kidnapped and separated from her loving mother. She grew up wandering from place to place, but she never complained about her destiny. On the contrary, Esmeralda became a kind and beautiful queen. Many young men pursued her, but Esmeralda gave her entire heart to Captain Phoebus. Their meeting was a classic hero saves the beauty scenario. In Esmeralda's mind, Phoebus was the prince on a white horse, wielding a righteous sword. Intoxicated by love and passionate affection, she was always ready to fulfill Phoebus's every request. Even when called out to the suburbs in the middle of the night, she did not hesitate. One day, when she was with Phoebus at a small inn, the sweet, happy atmosphere enchanted her, and she confessed, "Becoming your wife would be my greatest pride." But when Phoebus heard these words, he replied with a cold voice, "We are very good as we are. Why should we get married?" In reality, Phoebus was only infatuated with Esmeralda's beauty. He didn't cherish her at all. As Esmeralda tried to ask more about this, a figure from the shadows lunged out, stabbed Phoebus, and fled. Seeing Phoebus in agony, lying in a pool of blood, Esmeralda fainted. However, when she awoke, she had to bear all the blame. The brutal trial used a series of tortures to force her to confess and sentenced her to death. Instead of trying to defend herself, she was more concerned about Phoebus's safety. Yet, even as she was led to the gallows, she received no news or rescue from Phoebus. In fact, Phoebus was perfectly fine. After learning that Esmeralda was wrongly accused, he chose to ignore it and nonchalantly went on vacation with other women. The heartbreaking truth is that until her death, Esmeralda could not realize that the perfect lover in her heart was merely a terrible, greedy, and dishonest scoundrel. There is a saying that heaven can measure the earth, but only the human heart cannot be measured beforehand. Do not use your own feelings to hurt others. Do not use the fleeting time in your short destiny to test love. And do not think that if you love someone with utmost sincerity, they will reciprocate exactly the same way. Because in love, too many people pretend, covering their greed and selfishness. No matter how much you love, never place your entire life in someone else's hands. Always leave yourself an escape, a path. Behind fervent love lies extreme selfishness. At Notre Dame Cathedral, there was a renowned priest named Claude Frollo. Though young, this archdeacon was highly talented, knowledgeable, discreet, and commanded the church's trust. He was considered a symbol of absolute asceticism. Whenever he heard the rustle of a woman's skirt passing by, Claude would immediately pull up his hood to cover his eyes. Even when a royal princess requested a meeting, he hesitated and refused. What made others admire him most was that Frollo, born into a noble family, was humble and brought good to the poor. For instance, when Quasimodo, a disabled, abandoned child so ugly that no one dared approach him, Claude defied all opinions, took Quasimodo to the church, nurtured him, and made him the bell ringer. He also helped an orphan child who wandered the streets year-round. Claude not only helped, but personally taught him to read and write, enabling him to reverse his fate from an illiterate to a poet. The writer Hugo praised Claude for his benevolent soul. However, at the age of 35, this admirable priest accidentally saw the beautiful Esmeralda and was immediately captivated by her graceful dancing and her big, dark, round eyes. Frollo was trapped in the mire of love and couldn't escape. The ascetic beliefs he had once adhered to now collapsed instantly. But no matter what, Esmeralda disliked Frollo and always tried to avoid him. Frollo became so desperate that he could only stand in the distance, secretly watching her from the top of the bell tower to soothe the pain of his secret love. Not long after hearing that Esmeralda was about to marry, Frollo was so consumed with rage that his eyes burned. He panicked, fearing that he would finally lose the woman he loved. So, he incited the hunchback Quasimodo to kidnap Esmeralda late at night. Unexpectedly, a knight suddenly appeared, rescued Esmeralda, and captured the hunchback. Frollo's nature is no different from the saying, "A flower blooms on two sides, life lies between good and evil." In reality, everyone possesses both a dark and a light entity, good and evil, contradictory yet coexisting within them. Even if everyone around believes someone is good, wicked thoughts can still lurk in the hidden corners of their soul. Such shadows, greed, anger, delusion, jealousy, and evil desires always exist. As Hugo himself said, meanness and greatness, ugliness and kindness, hatred and love can exist in one heart without excluding each other. So, when does evil emerge? It is when a person cannot accept who they truly are and cannot treat the present kindly. In reality, Claude always lived under the guise of being a guardian of souls, but all of it emerged and was genuine. The monster of Notre Dame, Quasimodo, had only one eye, a hunched back, and crooked legs. Because of his ugly and terrifying appearance, he grew up enduring the contempt and bullying of others. Society's indifference and people's coldness made him cold, cruel, and rude. He was like a walking devil, never treating anyone kindly except his adoptive father, Claude. That was until he met Esmeralda. Initially, Quasimodo kidnapped Esmeralda under Claude's direction, but this abduction failed. He was caught, beaten, and sentenced. The next day, Quasimodo knelt in the square. He was badly beaten, blood covering the ground. Gasping, he pleaded, "Please, some water." But all he received were taunts, insults, and thrown stones. Even his adoptive father, Claude, coldly turned his back and walked away. Only Esmeralda stepped forward, ignoring all previous suspicions, smiled, and poured water into his mouth. The cool water moistened his bitter throat and warmed his lonely, cold heart. Quasimodo shed his first tears. From that moment on, with Esmeralda, he was no longer an unapproachable, brutal person, but became her loyal, protective guardian with a pure and faithful heart. When Esmeralda refused Claude's help and was about to be led to the gallows, Quasimodo, taking advantage of everyone's distraction, leaped from the bell tower, defeated the executioner, and spirited her away. When everyone regained their senses, Quasimodo had returned to the church and declared her protection under the church's name. According to the regulations of that time, Notre Dame Cathedral was a sanctuary. A criminal, once inside, could become a saint and no one dared to violate them. These two were safe, but on the condition that they would not step outside or they would be punished. While at Notre Dame, Quasimodo accidentally discovered Claude's evil intentions towards Esmeralda. Although he feared his adoptive father, he was determined to stand up and declare, "Unless I die, no one shall touch Esmeralda." But even though he risked his life to save Esmeralda and meticulously loved and cared for her, Esmeralda still turned away in fear at the sight of this ugly monster. Then Esmeralda was tricked by Archdeacon Frollo and chased out of the church. She was arrested in public and hanged. After Esmeralda's death, Quasimodo personally killed his adoptive father. Then, he went into the charnel house, embraced her corpse, and died with his love. Who could have imagined that such an ugly creature, despised and scorned by everyone, could possess such genuine and pure kindness for the one he loved? A writer said that within the inherent ugliness of human nature, there is also goodness and beauty. In polluted and dirty air, there is also the fragrance of flowers. Just as in the crevices of dark clouds, there is still sunlight. In foul and muddy swamps, there are still pure white lotus stones. A person with a cold face, seemingly unapproachable and selfish on the outside, can still hide a gentle and sincere heart within. It's just that often people are too focused on the evil and negative in them, overlooking the radiance of their goodness. It's just that the standards of human beauty and ugliness always follow the majority and are full of prejudice. 2 years later, the skeleton of a deformed man was found next to Esmeralda's skeleton. When they were separated, both skeletons simultaneously turned to dust. The brilliance of the Hunchback of Notre Dame lies in teaching us that beauty seen with the naked eye is not necessarily true beauty. A person with a beautiful appearance but filled with wicked thoughts is merely a walking corpse. Conversely, beneath an ugly exterior, there can still be a gentle soul, a benevolent heart. So, remember that the person you love may not need to be beautiful or rich, but they must certainly possess enough kindness, decency, and sincerity. Character is always what needs to be prioritized when choosing a life partner. So, what exactly is true love here? You might wonder how genuinely Quasimodo loved Esmeralda, yet he met a tragic end just like the wicked Claude. Ultimately, none of them could be with Esmeralda. However, if you look from a broader perspective, you will no longer think so. Indeed, the world in the Hunchback of Notre Dame can be divided into two realms. The first realm is the mundane world, which is the real world we live in now. Here, it is a society dominated by power, yet also decaying. It is arranged by humans with every order and regulation, creating countless prejudices. The most prominent figures in this realm are Claude Frollo and Phoebus. As the abbot of the monastery was close to the emperor, Frollo, a renowned and respected archdeacon, was an important figure beside the monarch. And Captain Phoebus, the captain of the king's guard, indulged in many mundane human desires in this realm: lust, alcoholism, deceit, and selfishness. When faced with trouble, he would immediately retreat and resign himself to fate. He had no choice but to marry into his aristocratic circle. When the novel describes Phoebus's marriage, it notes that this was a tragic and profound ending. Why do so many of us always exclaim that life is so difficult? Is it truly difficult, or do we carry within us the shadows of Frollo and Phoebus, pursuing power, ambition, and filled with selfishness? The naked, harsh truth of life and human nature in this realm you are living in is something worth pondering deeply. Conversely, two individuals with the souls of deities, like Quasimodo with his sincerity and Esmeralda with her inherent goodness, do not belong to the mundane realm. Thus, they were bound by its order, leading to a tragic end. Though they perished in the mortal realm, they could shine in the second realm, the kingdom of deities, truly named love. In reality, these two deities could not unite in the suffering mortal realm: Esmeralda with her purity and Quasimodo with his protective devotion, but ultimately, they merged in the spiritual world. Therefore, when the door of the spiritual world was opened by humans, when a sacred breath was breathed into their bones, the skeletons of those two intertwined, instantly turning to dust. Even if the mundane world rejected them, they remain forever a spiritual light, representing true love. This is something worth striving for throughout our lives, to understand what true love truly means. In the decaying mundane realm, Frollo and Phoebus both lived in illusion. That void pulled them into the abyss with tragic outcomes. But in the realm of love, the void, the disappearance of Esmeralda and Quasimodo, ascended eternally. Their deaths were the destination of an end, but also a point of departure. The author wrote, "Paris speaks during the day, Paris breathes at night, and what is that? It is when the bells of Notre Dame ring." But who rang the bells? It was Quasimodo. That wonderful and beautiful bell sound soothes the body and elevates the soul. This is love. It is the bell of God for us mortals. Let us listen and awaken, escape ambition, escape the selfishness of human society. Only sincerity and kindness can give wings to love. Learning to love is learning to return to the pure starting point. Master Zen practitioner Kingyuan Weixin once said that there are 3 stages in a person's life that almost everyone must experience. First, seeing mountains as mountains, seeing water as water. Next, seeing mountains not as mountains, seeing water not as water. Finally, seeing mountains still as mountains, seeing water still as water. When a person is born, they naturally have no discriminating mind. When you begin to recognize all things, you see mountains as mountains, water as water. But when you go through life's ups and downs, what you see may not be what you think. The less willing you are to believe what you haven't seen, the more easily you doubt. This means you begin to discriminate. At this point, you will see mountains not as mountains, water not as water, and people not as people. Indeed, there are many who can always act like beasts, or deceive, fabricate, harbor great ambition and extreme selfishness. How many people are fragments of the characters Frollo and Phoebus? Only when you have experienced the ups and downs of life, tasted all the warmth and coldness of time, only when you continuously learn and cultivate yourself, finally crossing the river of life and returning to the starting point, will you truly cherish the scene before your eyes. At this moment, you see mountains still as mountains, water still as water. There is a saying, may one cross thousands of miles and return with the heart of a child. These 3 stages of a lifetime also apply to love. The Hunchback of Notre Dame asterisk, through the truth about love and human nature, clearly shows all 3 stages within it. That is why this novel is not merely a pure love story. By comprehending it, you can escape the void of the mundane world to live higher, from the energy level of love. I hope both you and I can deeply understand the author's words. Of all God's creations, the human heart is the one that emits the greatest light. But sadly, it is also the one that creates the deepest darkness. Is it light or dark? Is it beautiful or ugly? I believe you already have your answer. Please do not let the denial of selfishness, stemming from lust, greed, anger, and delusion, cloud your eyes, living in illusion, seeing mountains not as mountains, and water not as water. The era the author described was centuries ago. However, even in today's society, how many truly know and understand how to love? The sad truth is that some people go through their entire lives without understanding, living forever in the illusory world that human society creates. To love is to return to oneself, right from the starting point, because you were inherently angels from the beginning, capable of ringing the most sacred bell of love.